right, thank you guys so much for coming. I am going to be talking about hummingbirds today, and hummingbirds are literally my favorite thing, probably. Well, dogs are my favorite thing, but first of all, I'll tell you, I'm not a bird expert. I'm just kind of a passionate amateur, major fan of all types of birds, and as you can imagine, this is not actually my finger, but this happened to me with that identical type of bird. So if I didn't like hummingbirds before, I was obsessed after this. This is a type of hummingbird called a violet-chested hummingbird. They're only found in, doesn't like hummingbirds, huh? They're only found in South America, in Venezuela and Colombia. And it was at a scientific study in the rainforest in the mountains. And basically they put out trays of fruit. And you may think that hummingbirds only like flowers, but no, they will absolutely go after fruit, especially if it's rotting. So in this place, the birds were so used to humans that you literally could put your finger out, they would land. The amazing thing about this is I had my finger like this. I was talking to someone because she had said, they'll probably land on you. I did not notice when the bird landed on me. That's how light they are. And I should say that it was kind of like a fly landing on you, literally. I think the thing is that it shouldn't be a surprise because everything about birds is designed so that they can fly without using too much energy. So their bone structure, their little air pockets in their skeleton to make them lighter. They only have one digestive system, whereas a lot of us think about two, one for liquid, one for solids. They've got one. Everything is to streamline them to make them able to easily fly without using up all their calories. So it should not have been a surprise that I couldn't feel it. But the funny thing is when she tapped me and she said, look, I went, oh! So, of course, terrified the poor bird and he ran away, but it was amazing. Okay. I'm going to do, before we talk about do's and don'ts, I'm going to talk about just sort of some general facts about hummingbirds because they are such astonishing creatures. So first of all, you probably know this. This is the only hummingbird that we have in our region. It's the ruby-throated hummingbird, named for the male, of course, whereas the female does not have that ruby throat, but they're that gorgeous iridescent green when the sun hits them. If you see a hummingbird that is not one of these kinds, it's, maybe lucky for you, a fun thing to spot. It's not lucky for the bird. It means that something went really awry. Like usually what happens, they're most often spotted, western hummingbirds are most often spotted in Maine, and they've been taken way, way off course, maybe by a storm while they were migrating. So it's sad if you see it. What we want to see is these guys in our area. So this is a great time to be talking about them because they are making their way to us right now. Typically we think of them leaving their wintering grounds, which are usually South and Central America. Panama, that's a perfect spot for them. February 28th is usually the earliest, but I imagine as the climate warms, that may be speeding up a little bit, or they may be coming a little bit early. Interesting fact, the males come first. Hummingbirds aren't like a lot of birds that mate for life. They're kind of free-for-alls. And so the boys come up before the girls come up. So those are the first ones typically that you see are the males. And they arrive to our area around May 1st. I like to prepare for them at the end of April because anybody that comes up early, it's slim pickings for them at that time, and they've just come through the most arduous thing you can imagine. And it's pretty amazing when you think that these tiny little birds are coming from Central America. Some of them are going to Nova Scotia. It's pretty astonishing. Okay, some interesting hummingbird facts. Their average lifespan is pretty low for a bird. It's in captivity, I think one lived to be like 14 years old, but it's typically 3 to 5 is sort of what you expect. They'll come back to the same spot year after year. So some of the things we'll talk about to try to attract them mean you might be getting the same ones again and again. But that's not much when you think a Canada goose could live to be up to 20. So when I talked about how everything about birds is designed for flight, this is extra true for hummingbirds. They are acrobatic masters of flight. Obviously, you know they can hover, they can fly backwards, they can fly forwards, they can fly sideways, they can fly upside down. They're truly unbelievable. But the unique way that they move their wings is why 25% of their body is chest muscles, enabling that wing movement. They take 250 breaths per minute. It's more than any other creature on Earth in terms of how fast they are breathing. Humans average, I think, 12. Dogs average 8 to 15. Little dogs faster than big dogs. So it's incredibly fast. Everything about them is fast. Same thing, heartbeat. The average bird heartbeat is 200 per minute. Their average is 600 per minute. And under extreme exertion, it can be 1,200. So it's just like mind-boggling fast. Okay, it's clear that they are well designed to like long tubular flowers, right? They've got these long beaks that enable them to get in. They don't have to get their whole heads in there because their beak is so long to get the nectar out. But did you know that this is what their tongues look like? So their tongues can be almost 2 inches long. Okay, so where is that tongue going when it's not in its mouth? There's a special channel in its brain up behind its eyes to the back of its head. It's just amazing, amazing creatures. But again, that is so they can get every last drip of nectar out without having to get deep into the plant. Okay, giving you a sense of the size of their nests. They're like a large thimble, kind of. So the quarter here gives you a sense of the context for it. Their little eggs are super tiny. The eggs take up to 18 days to hatch, and then the baby hummingbirds stay in the nest for about 3 weeks. What this is showing you is that the female hummingbirds use spider webs to help build the nest. And they put a layer of spider web around the outside of the nest because it kind of helps hold it together, but it's elastic enough that as the babies grow and get bigger, that the nest can expand. So basically, this little thing that I can't show you, sadly, she basically bows her head with her and kind of follows it around the side like this, spreading that spider web, and then goes back for more spider webs and more until it's all like a little web around the nest. Really cool. Okay, so one of the reasons I'm so happy everyone is here and that we're talking about mistakes that you might be making or things that can help them or inadvertently harm them is their population is in decline. Some of hummingbird species are as much as 50%, have lost 50% of their population in recent years. The latest data, which is not even that current, shows that our hummingbirds, ruby throats, are down 17%. So I think that means that the things that we do or don't do can actually really make an impact. One of the things that's tough for hummingbirds, because they are migratory birds, it's not enough to have a great environment for them here or where they spend the winter. Every single place in between where they're going has to provide for them on that whole way down. So you can see that's tough. If they hit an area where suddenly there's no food, no habitat, they're sunk along the way and they can't make that whole migration. So that's part of the issue. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is mistakes, and it's not necessarily all mistakes. Some of this is kind of conditions that we're allowing to happen, maybe put it that way. I feel strongly, it's one of the reasons why I do this, that we have an obligation. Most of the reason that they're in trouble is us. I feel like each of us as individuals can really help make a difference, and there is so much evidence of that. Even if everybody or tons of people put window boxes with hummingbird-specific plants in them, that has been shown to make a massive difference to whether certain birds can survive or not. So we really do, as individuals, we really can make a difference. So the first one I'm going to talk about is one in the condition as opposed to mistake. And I feel sorry to have to say this. So, cats. I love cats, so I don't mean to say anything negative, but they are hunters, and they're responsible for 4 billion birds a year being hunted, sometimes not even eaten, right? So it's a big issue. The main issue is with feral cats. It's not as much a problem for our pet cats that may be indoor or indoor-outdoor kind of cats. Feral cats, it's not even that each individual cat is catching so many birds. It's that feral cats reproduce. They have a few litters a year. Two feral cats can become thousands in a couple years. It's just astonishing. And every community has feral cats. So what I say here is a lot of animal shelters will help you humanely trap feral cats if you see them in your area, and neuter them or spay them, wait till they're feeling okay, and then put them right back where they were. So obviously that same cat, its whole life, can catch more birds, but he's not going to have tons and tons of litters of unwanted kittens that are going to have tough lives, because feral cats don't have great lives. So I'll give my information at the end of this. If you know there are a lot of feral cats in your neighborhood, please feel free to reach out, because I can connect you to networks that help humanely. It's called TNR. They trap them, neuter them, release them. So it's not harmful. It actually helps the cats to lead healthier lives and control the issue. So if you have an indoor-outdoor cat, a pet cat, and you let this cat outside sometime, this funny-looking collar has been shown to be incredibly successful at reducing the amount of birds that the cat can catch. The reason, and they're safe, they have a breakaway thing if the cat should get caught climbing something. So the reason they work better than the traditional bell method is that birds are much more visual than they are oral. So it could be, you could have a noisy feeder environment. He's not necessarily going to notice the bell. He will see this, because birds have eyes far apart deliberately so that they can see, scan their horizons for predators. So these I really, really recommend, and I try to spread the word about them. This is where you can get them. And I always say, if your friend has a cat, if your neighbor has a cat, that cat knows where your feeder is, right? So I always try and spread the word about that one. Okay, the next mistake, again, this is not a mistake per se, this is a condition. Modern windows are terrible for birds. Billions, it's hard to calculate the number, but billions of birds every year are dying striking windows. So obviously something like this is beautiful to humans, not good for birds, but there are things you can do if you have an issue, if you've noticed birds striking your window. And I'll be honest and say, because hummingbirds are so quick, their reflexes are quick, they are slightly less apt to fly into windows as a lot of other songbirds, but it is still an issue. So if you're renovating, keep in mind that things with panes, like the one on the left, are way better for birds. It's much less likely for them to actually accidentally think that this is a clear space that they can fly through. If you don't want to do that or have that, or you have a problematic window where you've noticed a lot of bird strikes, window boxes hugely help. And I would recommend for this one even to maybe make it even better by inserting some tall curly willow branches or something like this in it, or birch, skinny birch branches or something like that. Again, you're showing them there's something there, don't fly into it. The other thing that helps is Venetian blinds or plantation shutters inside can help as well. There's also specific film, which is available at this company. They sell all different kinds of films, but again, it's in certain lights it's very obvious, in certain lights it's not. So it's something to really consider that's not so obtrusive. It doesn't make everything look super ugly, but it really will help protect birds. Okay, this one is one where you put your feeder. This is the number one mistake that I think even people who are passionate about birds don't know about, or when I question people. It's one they're like, oh, I had no idea. So where you put your feeder is extremely important, and it's a lot down to predators, but more importantly, window strikes. So what you want is for the feeder to be either really close or really far away. So really close means within 3 feet. Really far away means 30 feet or greater. If they're in between, you're creating a situation where you're attracting lots of birds, some of which can't necessarily, they want to avoid other birds or whatever, so they are much more likely to fly into your windows if they're in between that 3 feet and 30 feet. So you really want to keep that in mind. And
that one on the window, a good...
That one is fine on the window. And in fact, it's good on the window because, again, it shows other birds there's something there. You can't just fly willy-nilly here. So it's definitely good. The other thing is, and this is probably obvious, don't put your feeder right near very dense shrubs because it's really just inviting. Every predator in the neighborhood will know exactly where that bird feeder is because birds are congregating there. And so it's a perfect spot for them to lay in wait and then pounce on the bird. The other thing, I didn't even mention this because really there's nothing that you can do about it, but one other predator, when I was mentioning cats, of hummingbirds is actually praying mantises. And it's not so common, but it's more there's a type of invasive Asian praying mantis that's here that has been found to, they'll wait on a window and then they'll pounce on the poor bird. So, okay, this one's super boring, but really, really important. And again, it's one that I think people don't realize. You need to clean up. If you're going to put bird feeders out, you have to clean it so much more than you think you do. And it's something to consider in the first place, like, am I really up for this to clean it as often as you're supposed to? What as often as you're supposed to is every time you fill it up or change the nectar, especially if it's over 80 degrees. It's just you're inviting bacteria and things that could sicken the bird. You will not necessarily realize it, and that's one thing that about a couple of the things I'm going to talk about. Birds have evolved to hide when they're sick, and it makes sense. A lot of species are this way. It's because being a sickly, frail-looking bird means every predator is going to pick you off and not one of the other birds. So they try to, everything in them is about looking as healthy as they possibly can. If you see a bird that's really sickly looking, that bird's really sick. So you won't necessarily know if you've made your hummingbird sick by keeping the nectar in there, not cleaning it frequently enough and giving them some sort of bacterial infection. So here's what I do. I clean and refill it at least once a week in cool weather. And so when I say I get ready for the hummingbirds in late April, that's what I'm talking about, when it's still really cool out. When it's warm or hot, or if it's in the sun where it really gets heated up, it's at least 2 to 5 times a week that you have to clean it. I hate this, but I think for some people it's like, okay, then forget it. I'm not going to have a feeder. Luckily, we're going to talk about other things you can do. So you don't need a feeder to attract them. The best way to do it, I don't use bleach, again, because I'm too worried that there could be some residue. So I use vinegar. Take it inside, put a small amount of the distilled white vinegar in water. Use a bottle brush that you specifically use for this. Don't use it then on your dishes or anything for yourself. Rinse it really, really, really well. I say you think you've rinsed it enough, start again in your mind, and then leave it to air dry, and then you can fill it up. So it's a pain, let's be honest. Okay, the next thing. I like to say, guess the 2 things that are wrong with this photo. The first thing is just, to me, hilarious, and that is, you are never going to see this many hummingbirds on one thing. They're super territorial. The most you'll ever see is sort of an aerial battle. One will be feeding and another one will come over and they'll duke it out and one will win. But obviously this has been photoshopped to make you think that this is the ultimate hummingbird feeder. But the real thing that's wrong is the color of the nectar. I know a lot of people have now heard about this. Red nectar is not good for hummingbirds. So it's kind of a controversial subject, honestly, because the manufacturers say it's fine. You know, maybe they would, right? A lot of people still stock it. At best, it is unnecessary for them. And there are no regulations about how much a manufacturer can put in. So they can put in as much as they wanted. You know, red dye number 40, and anytime you hear about things being banned for humans, they generally aren't banned for wildlife or animals. So we now know that it's a derivative, red dye number 40 is a derivative of petroleum. So it's probably not doing anything good for them. And because there's not a lot of money, shockingly, in studying what color is good for, whether red dye is bad for hummingbirds, there are no definitive studies that have definitively proven this. However, there is some evidence that it can make them sick, that it can weaken their immune system, make them less likely to be able to have babies. And the two ultimate authorities on birds in the US, the Cornell Ornithology Lab and the Audubon Society, both say don't feed them red nectar. So I feel like that should just tell us don't do it. Making your own is always better because even if you're buying clear liquid, clear nectar, it has preservatives in it. So again, probably chemicals that they don't need. We don't know whether it's actually harming them as well. So basically the basic recipe is 4 parts water to 1 part sugar. This is one case where regular white, like Domino's sugar is what you want, not organic, not turbinado, not fancy. You want the white stuff because anytime there are any of the color left in sugar, that's more stuff that can go bad in the nectar. So you really just want white classic sugar. You boil it just enough that you're killing off any impurities that might be in there, but not enough that you're reducing the amount of liquid. If too much evaporates, then the percentage of sugar to water gets to be too high, and it's not as healthy for them. So make sure it cools before you fill it up and put it out. You can also, and I didn't put this as a separate slide, as I said, they like fruit. So you can also, if you have a tray feeder, for instance, like for Baltimore Orioles or just a flat tray that you put fruit on, if you put rotting fruit or banana peels on that, you will probably get more bird activity in general because some will try and peck at the actual fruit, but it will also attract fruit flies, which will attract more birds of all kinds. Okay, this is the biggest mistake, and I realize given the nature of where we are today, this is clearly, I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure, but pesticides and chemicals, this is the hugest issue for hummingbirds and the biggest mistake you can make. And when I talk about it, I'm not just talking about spraying the things that the hummingbirds might come to. I'm talking about treating your lawn. And I'm also talking about even natural sprays for ticks or mosquitoes. The reason it's obviously complex, birds can get acute poisoning if they land on something right after it's been sprayed. Can kill them within minutes, especially very small ones. And newsflash, they can't read those signs that say, don't land here. So, I don't know how that, this time of year I get crazy seeing all the signs because it feels like everyone does it and people don't realize how harmful it is. I feel like it's like you're basically pouring poison on your lawn that gets into our groundwater, doesn't go anywhere, it's here forever. And I think a lot of people feel comfortable doing it because all their neighbors are doing it, and the companies are saying, well, it's fine, don't worry, the studies are fine. A study of dogs showed that they are 70% more likely to get a type of fatal cancer that is not found in places where the chemicals that are used in those lawn treatments are banned. So they don't have that kind of cancer. And the study, it was a tough study that followed dogs for like 7 years or something, and they made sure that all the dogs were kept off for the 24 hours after. So we're talking about using it as recommended, and they're still getting these kinds of cancers, so terrible. But the main reason about not using anything, oh, and also if you like fireflies, fireflies need to live underground for a long time before they're born. So people that treat for this, it's one of the major reasons we just really don't have many fireflies left, because so many people are just routinely doing this. But the other reason is bugs are so important for birds. Like you've maybe heard it, no bugs, no birds, literally. Every bird, hummingbirds eat the ones that I list here, and I already mentioned how they need spider webs to successfully make their nests. And here's a little action shot of one actually eating a bug. But even birds that we think of as carnivores, bald eagles, hawks that are hunters, when they're babies, they need bugs. So anything that you do to keep bugs, I know we don't love them, but anything you do to keep bugs around, you're going to have healthier biodiversity and you're going to have more birds. Okay, this last one, I'm not saying don't have a feeder, but I'm just going to tell you why some experts say don't artificially feed them, don't give them food. So the main reasons I've sort of already touched on are, and by the way, I have a hummingbird feeder. So just so you know where I stand, I love it. I'm careful about all the things you're supposed to be careful about. The main reason you're causing all these birds to congregate in one spot, which means if anybody gets sick, they're more likely to give it to other birds. There's a chance more chance of predators finding them because they're again congregating in one spot. Chance of bacteria or fungal infection, all those kinds of things if you're not perfect about cleaning. But the real thing is that this is specific to hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are pollinators. So think about it as like if you're a parent or grandparent. If you have big bowls of candy, do you think the kids are going to be going in the fridge for carrots? No, they're going to be going for the candy. So that's the analogy here, that hummingbirds are going to go for this easy, sweet nectar. It's not as healthy for them for reasons that we don't even fully understand as the nectar from plants. But also, they need to pollinate the next year's plants. They're meant to be going from flower to flower to flower, pollinating. So you get this vicious cycle of if everybody's feeding them and not putting the right flowers in their yard for them, you get fewer and fewer, and therefore they need to spend more time here, and the problem gets worse. So the best way, even if you have a feeder, the best way is to feed them with plants. And plants, when I say plants, it's not just any plants, it is native plants. And I'm sure every single person today has talked about native plants. That's what so much of what this is about. Native plants, the bottom line is native plants are just what was here before European settlers came here. That's it. Whatever plants were growing in this area when just Native Americans were living here. The reason that they're so crucial and so much better in so many ways is not just because they don't need as many resources or as much water, or they're perfectly suited. It's that they evolved at the exact same time with our wildlife. They evolved with the bugs that are here. They evolved with the birds that are here. So they have this wonderful relationship where they give each other what they need. But the interesting thing is, I'm going to talk about, already covered this, but I'm going to talk about some of the specific native plants that are great for hummingbirds. But before I do, I got ahead of myself, obviously. Native plants, what we're growing here before we got here. Okay, this list is not in any way scientific or anything. It's purely what I sort of put together, thinking off the top of my head. What are some of the most common plants that I have in my yard, that neighbors have, that people across the street have? None of these plants are native, not one. So when you think about the fact that hummingbirds need native plants to be at their healthiest, Other birds, like chickadees, for example, chickadees, our state bird, they need 70% native plants to be able to survive. So if everybody in your neighborhood, their yards are full of this and nothing else, imagine a bird like a chickadee that needs to eat, I think it's every 30 minutes to survive. Imagine they're going to have to fly further and further, use up more and more energy, one of the reasons for decline. So what I say for this is, don't pull these things out, but if you're adding more things, if something dies and you need to replace it, choose a native plant in its place, and you'll be rewarded with like more wildlife, more hummingbirds, etc. So this is my favorite native plant for hummingbirds, and it's not one that you can commonly find at nurseries because it's sort of considered a weed. It used to be everywhere. A lot of the invasive plants in our area have sort of wiped it out, but if you have some, it likes shade. It will spread aggressively, and it will attract lots of things, not just hummingbirds, but hummingbirds adore it. You can kind of see why. It's, the flower is shaped sort of like an orchid. It also, one of the reasons it's so good for hummingbirds is that it blooms at the very end of the summer. It starts to bloom in like September. So it's right when they're starting to bulk up and need more things to carry them for their migration south. But a lot of other things aren't still blooming. So it's just a really, really great one for hummingbirds. So that's called jewelweed, and it's considered a natural antidote for poison ivy. I will say, I swear by it, its stems are very watery. So if you snap the stem and rub the liquid on where you touch the poison ivy, I swear it works. And some people put it in salves and things like that if you actually have poison ivy. Okay, another one, swamp milkweed. Despite its name, swamp milkweed, you don't need to have really, really wet conditions. It will work in lots of different places. And it's not quite as aggressive a spreader as some of the other milkweeds. Again, there used to be tons of this everywhere. A lot of the invasive plants have taken over and outcompeted these. And this plant definitely will attract hummingbirds. It's very fragrant. I think it's beautiful, but it's also monarchs. So monarchs, you probably know this. If you think hummingbirds are in trouble, monarchs lost 50% of their species, their population, 23 to 24. So we need to plant more milkweed. But it also will attract native bees, bumblebees, all different kinds of birds. It's amazing. Okay, next one, bee balm. This is an example to me when people say, oh, I have to have red nectar because they only go to red things. Not true. They do love red, no question. But they love bee balm, and bee balm comes in. There's a red variety too. But bee balm is a wonderful native plant that will attract lots of life to your garden, including hummingbirds. This one is a fantastic one for hummingbirds. Great blue lobelia. It's it's tall. It's really nice, beautiful, and it's one that I think will definitely get hummingbirds to visit. This is a list of some of my favorite for hummingbirds. And the reason I'm showing you an oak tree there is because I think when we think of hummingbirds, we typically think of flowers because of the nectar, but you need places for them to nest, and you need things that attract bugs to really make them healthy and have lots of them. So one of the best things you can do, of anything you ever do, plant a white oak, a native white oak tree. This is such a perfect example of why native plants are better than non-native. So 550 different types of caterpillars can live in a white oak tree. When you think about, like in Boston for a time, they were planting Ginko trees. When a street tree died, they put in a Ginko tree. Ginko trees are very hardy. They're attractive. They're not native here. They can only support 5 types of caterpillars. So when you think about, okay, not a big deal if there's just one Ginko tree, but when you think about the fact that all of us are choosing plants and trees to put in our yards that don't have the benefits of natives, it really, really starts to add up at a time when nature is under pressure even more. This is my favorite database, or sounds like I have tons of databases I love. No, this is my favorite resource. It's the Audubon's native plant finder. And basically, you put in that address, you put in your zip code, and then it will tell you according to whether you're interested in shrubs, trees, perennials, whatever you're interested in. It will tell you what native plants are specific to your area and what birds they attract. So it's really, really fun to be able to see, oh, if I put in this plant, this shrub, I'll get, tons more birds. And which ones you might like. Okay, where to purchase native plants. And this is something that I think I need to mention, because a lot of native plants, when you go to places like this, they're more aware of native plants, and they might have a native plant section. If the plant says native, and then it's called something with like a trademark symbol or quotes, like, purple beauty, blah, 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 that's not a true native. That's a plant that a human took from a native plant, tinkered with to make it better for us. Probably not better for wildlife. So you want true natives wherever possible. So dragonfly natives in Dartmouth and blue stem natives in Norwell are both great resources for true natives. They 100%, there's nothing been tinkered with, they're really finding stock. And I'm not saying that you can't find true natives at other places. I'm sure you can. It's just sort of do your homework, check it out. The telltale sign is if there's quotation marks, like a fancy name or a trademark symbol on it, it means a human has messed with it. It's a cultivar as opposed to a true native. And Holly Hill Farm Plant Sale is a great resource. I think they have 2 in the spring. They're not all native, but they've increased the number of natives, and they are all organic. So that's nice. Oh, and Garden in the Woods. If you haven't been there, it is so worth going. Boy, it can just show you how beautiful purely native plants can be, and their nursery is wonderful. Okay, I'm done unless everybody has questions, but I did want to mention this because if any of you were at the talk before, they were talking about invasive plants. So my group is called Wild Cohasset, and we organize events to help birds and butterflies and pollinators throughout the South Shore. Every May, we have a day where we invite people to volunteer, and we can assign you a place to go. Or you can say, I'm going to do it in my neighborhood, and we'll tell you exactly what to do. And then our target on this one is garlic mustard, which is a major reason that we don't have milkweed or jewelweed or some of these things that hummingbirds really, really love. And I can tell you that we've been working a lot in this whole area. We work in almost between Boston and the Cape, but mainly concentrated around here. And there are areas in Cohasset, for instance, where it was just completely garlic mustard. Now there's lots of jewelweed, there's more milkweed, there's some spring ephemerals, there are all these things popping up that we're just waiting for a chance to come back. And there's no doubt that it's helping the bird population and wildlife. If you go to wildcohasset.org and you click on Contact Me, you'll get me and ask any question or any of the things that I talked about. I can send them again or things like that. There's a lot of information on there too. Thank you.